As writers, I think we often wonder about creativity and innovation. We all want to create something that hasn't been created before. We want a brand new novel, a brand new idea that no one has thought of. And how difficult is that? Like, how difficult is it to come up with something new? Because it seems like some people just do it so easily. We read our favorite novels and they seem so like somebody just put that together so wonderful. Like, wow, this is a great story. Why didn't I think of that? Right? What a great story. We watch things like Disney movies and they all seem so perfect. And so how is it that someone creates something new that somebody hasn't thought of before that becomes a big hit? So today we're going to talk about creating stories through reflection, hard work, and revision, because that is what innovation is.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte, and I'm really happy that you're here. So let's talk about innovation today. So I read a book called Smarter, Faster, Better by Charles Duhigg. And he's written quite a few actually really interesting books, one about habits. And this one was about innovation, doing things better, doing things in a smarter way. And he has a really interesting chapter, which I wanted to share with you. So it's about innovation. What he talks about is the movie Frozen. So if you have little kids, or if you've just been around the last few years, right? You saw what a great big hit Frozen was. You couldn't go into a store without finding the Frozen toys and seeing Frozen on all commercials and everything, right? Well, so it's easy to think of like, wow, well, that was, a brilliant story, and they, that's just Disney, right? And actually, it's not true. So the book doesn't really focus on how brilliant Disney is. In fact, with this story, he talks about how it actually started out as a disaster. So they changed it continuously. They first had the two girls not be sisters. They had the way they crafted them was one super good, one was super bad. So they went through all these different iterations of the movie. They finally settled on one, and they brought in people to, mostly their own people, so their own editors, their own writers, and their own, just the Disney staff, and they showed them the movie. And at the end of the movie, nobody said a word. It was super quiet. So typically when they have a movie, people will clap, they'll talk about it. And this was just like total silence. So the writers, the producers, they said, okay, there's a problem here. There's something wrong, because we're not hitting a nerve. People aren't loving it. They're not hating it. There's just no emotion whatsoever, and you can't have that with any story. So the readers, the viewers, have to have a reaction. You want them to have a reaction. No reaction is very, very bad for storytelling, for writers, and for producers, and for anybody who's creating a story. So what was the problem with this version of it? Well, Anna was the younger character, and she was bossy and uptight. This is how they described her: obsessed about her upcoming wedding. Elsa, which was the older sister, was jealous, evil, and cursed. So neither character was really likable. So you have to have at least one of them that is likable, hopefully both of them in their own way. But that was sort of only the first problem. The story was full of holes and irrational scenes. So for example, the Prince Hans, didn't seem like any kind of man that a princess would want to fight for. The Snowman, Olaf, was a terrible character in that version. He was evil. The story just wasn't working. It didn't matter how many times they rewrote it. It seemed like every version was not good. So the version where they weren't sisters just didn't gel. Then they had one where they weren't royalty. They were just like regular people. That one wasn't working. So nothing worked. and they couldn't figure out why. And the writers and producers of Disney just were kind of baffled because they wanted to write a different kind of story. They wanted to be innovative. They wanted a story that wasn't like the other ones. Yeah, they wanted to have the princesses, but they didn't want the cliches of the previous Disney movies. They wanted to be modern, and they wanted a message that said that if you work together, you could be successful. Problem was that the movie was just not inspiring. So one of the things that does actually make Disney's movies typically loved are the cliches, right? So you have that handsome hero like that people fall in love with. We love when like good triumphs over evil, and that is in a lot of the Disney movies. And so if you're not going to provide those traditional Disney elements into the movie, then there has to be something spectacular about the movie that people are going to be attracted to. And they didn't have any of that. And so one of the points that Duhigg makes in his book, in that chapter, that I really liked was that in order to be innovative, you really need to have the past. So there is no innovation that is completely brand new. That all innovation uses the past as a pattern or as a template of sorts, right? So in their idea of not using anything that had been used in movies in the past, and that with the beloved Disney movies, they were actually making a huge mistake because they were not taking the elements that people loved from these old movies and letting those be sort of the backbone of their new movie. They wanted something modern, something brand new, something innovative, but they were ignoring the things that actually people loved about their movies. So he talks about taking proven conventions and using them in new ways to create something innovative and something different. But you still have those basics that you're going to start with. And the other thing that was sort of implied and that I took from what he was talking about and from him telling the story was that you also need to be able to work with other people, right? So you need to collaborate. Not one person was able to figure out the problem of the story, but by working together, the different writers, different producers, the musical talent that writes the music, they were able to come up with a solution and make this story work. And this also brings up the myth of the overnight success, right? So we expect we don't expect it, but we see that blockbuster movie or that brand new book that comes out and it becomes this huge hit, and all of a sudden the actors, the writers are all on all the podcasts and all the TV talk shows and all of that. And we think, wow, this person came out of nowhere and they're a huge success. And that's because we don't see everything that's behind the scenes, right? We don't see maybe all the different books they wrote before that blockbuster book that didn't nobody noticed, right? We don't see the struggles behind. We only see that one big thing that finally does explode into the real world. It just happens to be sometimes an anomaly, right? It's not something that that is expected at all. So stories like this struggle to make Frozen into a great movie are really wonderful because they show us us creatives out here that are struggling to write our own stories, that things sometimes need to go through multiple revisions and need to be edited and talked through and rewritten. And it's a lot of hard work. It's not just you write it and it becomes this massive hit. If we want to succeed, then what we have to do is be able to write these multiple terrible drafts and continuously revise our story, because that's what it takes to become successful. And this idea of the overnight success has honestly harmed writers, because the old writers are, that are classics today, that didn't have computers, that didn't have typewriters even, that hand wrote their work. They put in a lot of time and a lot of revision, and they actually thought about things before they wrote things down. They didn't just write it down and delete it and write it down, right? They took their time and they wrote it, because an error meant rewriting the whole thing by hand, and they often did do that. And so by the time they were finished, it was wonderful, and sometimes it took years. Because why? Because they took that time, they worked hard, they really thought about the words before they put them down. And so the idea now that, oh, you write something and you're going to become hugely successful, I think does hurt does hurt our creativity, and it hurts our ability to be innovative. And when you think about it too, a lot of these people did not become successful until after they died even. So nobody noticed their brilliance until years after they weren't even around anymore. Now, most of us hopefully don't want to wait that long, but at least we need to be patient and not expect that what we are creating is, especially if it's new, especially if it's innovative and you haven't done, nobody has done something like this. It might take some time for the people to see how wonderful it is and to value it the way you do. The other thing that I got from this chapter that I read was that we need to be always looking for feedback, because that is the only way that we're going to determine whether something is really good or really not good. So, with Disney writers, they're very lucky. It's a team of people that are all working together. And so they're able to get feedback from not only, from multiple people that they're working with, and then eventually from, focus groups and stuff. Now, we don't all have that because most of us are writers that are just working at home, but we do want to get opinions from others and maybe some critiques, because that is going to help us to strengthen our writing and to see how it's being received by an audience. Now, people may not always be brave enough to tell you the truth, so you want to make sure that they are not like your parents or your friends or people like that, because they're going to probably have a harder time telling you, oh, there's a plot hole here, or these characters are unlikable. So try to find other writers, try to find other critique groups, submit your story maybe to a contest where you do get critiques, because that is helpful, and it does create a situation where you're going to get that feedback that's going to be helpful for you, that you're going to be able to bring back to your story and make changes. And also make sure that you are hiring editors to help you to edit your work before you actually publish it. And I know that's painful because most of us don't have money to hire for something that may or may not ever get published. But if you are thinking of publishing your work, then you do want to have that reader that's reading, maybe for the content, developmental type editors, or maybe just line editors that are reading to make sure that it's flowing well, that it sounds good, maybe a grammatical person who's looking at just the grammar of your story. So do hire, again, that's a different type of feedback that you're going to need. And lastly, what the Frozen story shows us is that we need to ask a lot of questions. One of the things that these people were doing is they were asking questions like, why isn't it working? Or what can we try that is different? Or what are sisters' relationships really like? The nice thing is with siblings, there is a lot of conflict sometimes, right? So there are jealousies, or there are things that happen with siblings, but what are they exactly? It's never that one is evil and one is good, right? They both have maybe a little good and a little evil, and they have conflicts with each other. And so they started to ask those type of questions. What is it really like for siblings? What was it like with my sibling? And these questions helped them to create better scenes, more realistic scenes between the two sisters. And when you think about it, right, when you first start to write a story and you have your plot ideas, some of them may be a little fuzzy. So after you write, you look at it, it may not look the way you expect it to look. So you want to ask yourself questions. Well, what did I have in mind? What did I want this scene to accomplish? And what I like is, so I'm going to read to you. So in the book, what it said is that they were starting to ask what if questions, right? And those are good questions to ask as a writer. Well, what if this happened? What if we did it this way? They had this songwriter, Kristen Anderson Lopez, and a question that she asked is, what if you tried to be good your entire life and it didn't matter because people constantly judged you? So that was a good question. Why was that a good question? Because it evokes an emotion. It helps you to feel that, well, yeah, what if I tried to be good my entire life, but no matter what I did, nobody appreciated, nobody cared? Who hasn't felt judged by other people? So that was a good question to ask to try to create a better character. And that question led her to create a better, more three-dimensional Elsa, right? So what she says was Elsa tried to do everything right all her life, but now she's being punished for being herself, and the only way out is for her to stop caring and to let it all go. Well, from there came the song that you probably heard a million times, because I know I did. Everywhere you went, you heard the song, and it was the Let It Go song. And it came from this question that she asked herself. And when she contacted the writers and the producers, and she says, "Hey, here's this song," they were like super excited. They were so excited. They said, "You know what? This is what this story is about. This exactly is what the whole story is about." And it came together. So asking questions about life, asking questions about what might be, asking questions about what might happen in real life, those are very helpful to you as a writer when you are creating your story. So again, the reason that I decided to create this video is because a lot of times as creative people, we think we want to come up with this totally innovative new idea, and we don't really know how to go about it. And so, what this chapter that I read in this book reinforces that, well, first of all, there is nothing innovative. We want to go back to the past and borrow from the things that worked, look at what worked, and use those as a template to create something new. A lot of times we're borrowing from the past. All great stories actually have looked at things in the past, either myths or whatever, to create a better story. The second thing is that it's okay if something is not perfect right away, that it requires a lot of hard work, that forget about the myth of the overnight success and the instant greatness of anything, because that doesn't exist. What really does exist is a lot of hard work, where you're redoing it, where you're rewriting it, where you're asking questions to make the story better. And the third thing is that it requires a lot of revision, right? We want to let other people see it. We want to use the feedback we get it to revise and make it better, to make it stronger. And that we really do want to get to that kernel of what the story is really about, and really understand that in order to create a great innovative story. So I just wanted to share that with you because, again, I thought that that was a really good example of what happens not only to us, but even to big companies like Disney, that eventually this, of course, does explode and become an amazing movie, but there was a point where they thought it was going to fail completely. And I think we've all been there where we've thought this story that I'm working on is just a failure. It sounded good at the beginning, but it's really not. And I hope that this encourages you to keep going, to, instead of giving up on the story, just keep going through it, keep asking questions, keep getting feedback, keep looking at it in different ways from different angles until it becomes the masterpiece that you expect it to be. I hope that this helps you. I hope that this encourages you. And if it does, please hit the like and the share button below. Thank you so much. Also subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again next Friday.